Hi everyone! Today, Wren is going to be talking about the costume designs for their character, Josofin, who is the main character of the graphic novel in progress, The House on Caple Hill. The four pictures here were drawn by Wren and show four different costumes worn by Josofin. So we're going to start by talking about the one at the bottom right, which is the one with the hand extended.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun. Fun being here, and this is extra fun for me because if you couldn't tell, I love drawing clothes. And almost as much as I love drawing clothes, I love talking about clothes. Um, so, with this bottom right picture, we are looking at Josephine in her original setting, which is sort of a late Victorian. Um, by the time the story really picks up, should be around the 1860s. And I wanted to give her a look that looked kind of tomboyish and athletic for its time. And we'll have scenes of her at the dressmakers giving instructions that will just all but disgust her family. Um, but I wanted to have a sense of this sort of out of time that there's the outside of time rather that she looks at the constraints of what she's supposed to look like within her society and within her, little microculture, and says, "All right, but I'm going to do it my way." So we're seeing her using, um, I think, what we'll see a lot of Joe using with her costumes in the beginning of the story. Um, like I said, something that's geared more towards activity, having always this extra fabric around the shoulders and finding ways to pull her skirts behind her so they're not in her way. The way the bodice is cut and constructed is very much the shape and silhouette that would be expected at the time, but with Joe, it's being styled in a way that's still um, that has the same shape but connotates a different aesthetic. So I wanted her bodice, for instance, in this picture to look a little bit more like a tuxedo in a certain way, or maybe like a riding outfit. Um, but still have the shape and again the general silhouette that would be expected of her time, and the long sleeves that I would say almost extend her hands more than diminish them.
Mm-hmm. Would you say the hairstyle is also androgynous?
um that's a really good question. I wouldn't call her hairstyle particularly androgynous I would say that she's kind of doing her best. And it's funny because when you look at a lot of Victorian um fashion plates and whatnot, there are not a lot of people with bangs. And I think that was something that was going to be sort of a little bit out of place, but not too out of place. Like some people did, but whatever hair wasn't very tightly combed and then braided into place was usually styled into very like perfect, very manicured curls or something of that nature. It wasn't allowed to simply just drape the way that Joe's
Hmm.
letting it here. That would have been a little more reminiscent of, I don't know, maybe even of a Napoleonic time, or again, seeing a little bit further ahead in time, more of a tousled, loose appearance to the hair. Um, but I think that for the time, it would be acceptable for her to be seen with her hair like this. I think the bangs are probably the only thing that are technically not really historically accurate, but for the sake of, I mean, for multitudes of reasons, I think that it's still appropriate for the character. But androgynous, I don't think we've gotten there quite yet.
Hmm. What color palette will this drawing have?
um, when I'm looking at Joe, particularly in the first half of the Book of Khet, I want to be giving her a lot of earthy tones, a lot of I want to see her in like slate blue, things that are kind of muted. Um Maybe an occasional like again very muted olive green if she has any, greens to add to her wardrobe. I don't see her being someone who chooses bright flashy fabrics whatsoever. I see her wearing colors that will look all right if she gets them a bit messy, something that's durable and a little more practical.
Hmm. Right, that makes sense. And what's the next drawing chronologically speaking?
So, chronologically speaking, the next one is directly above the one we started with. And here, I'd say this one kind of stands out for the others because this is definitely not daytime attire. This is definitely an evening scene for Josephine. And this would be from the second part of the Book of Khet when she is sort of stuck with Peter and the Earlwood family, and I wanted a thing there for it to be very particular that Peter, of course, has become gained control over her life in a sense. And part of that is in that he tells her explicitly what to wear. Like it's not even like her family where she would be in the constraints of a particular fashion, but she could still do, choose a few things for herself in there. Here he is everything he says is what she walks out with. So ultimately, she's expressing what he sees her as, not who she is.
Hmm. What
And
outfit, like what time period is this from?
so this one, so I wanted what I wanted to see was that she's out of place in a different way with him. So when she's with Peter, he is always dressing her for what some would call the Gilded Age, what some would call the Belle Epoque, um, sort of an 1880s and 90s silhouette that's much more tight and controlled in its appearance. Something that is um, narrower in the silhouette than we would have seen in the Victorian, which was a little bit more hourglass shaped and not so much of a bustle in the back. But we do see her wearing mm, um, a bigger bustle when she's and I think that that's part of the thing is that he's dressing her as he sees her. He's dressing her in the clothes of one generation before the time she's in. So when they go to these evening um, affairs and she's dressed like this, she's standing out because even though technically it's the most outdated fashion in the room, she's wearing it so well and it's so completely put together that it could almost be taken for artistic in a
I
very
see.
um, a la Oliver Wilde's aesthetes. These people who um, took fashion and made it into art and made it expressive in a certain way. So people think that that's what's being aimed for, but Josephine genuinely just doesn't know any better because she's already out of place to begin with. So she has no idea. And this I always want her to look kind of uncomfortable in these clothes because even for um like especially for her to be showing this much skin, to be um you know, to have this kind of silhouette feels very revealing to her, and I think that she would be immensely uncomfortable with it, but she kind of has to for reasons we'll see in the book, just kind of put on this show and be put on display really. And
Hmm.
it's not ever out of a it's never from a positive light either. She's being put on display almost as a trophy, but she doesn't understand why, and the people around her don't understand why. She's just a spectacle and she hates it.
Hmm. Right. Is there a reason why Peter is fixated on fashion that's outdated and forces it on her?
There is. So when Peter first sees her, he's actually watching her come out of the woods. So he sees her in her wedding gown, which for its time was kind of ahead, and it was covered in roses, and he's obsessed with this image of her. The particular he dresses her this way because he thinks it's the most beautiful. And Peter, being who he is, he's also outside of time, but in a different way. And he views it a lot more objectively because he's self-aware. He's been around a long time, and he's watched the things that, what people look like has changed over time. But he decides objectively what he thinks is the most beautiful and how he wants to envision Josephine, and that's what they get.
I see. Right. And what color scheme does this drawing have?
Oh, I see this one being a lot more gaudy. Um, I love, and it's so much fun to look at the fashion plates and the extant garments that we have in museums. But these gowns really were from the Gilded Age and the Belle Epoque. They were artistic, and they were very loud. They were so loud, and when I think of those eras and when I think of this kind of costume, I think about very rich jewel tone colors, like it kind of deep pinks and plums. I think of like the Toulouse-Lautrec prints that felt like these very bright but simultaneously very deep colors, um, that just magnetize your eyes.
I see. Yeah, that
Just
that that
opulence.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It contrasts a lot with, the first one, which is what, she's trying to subtly alter to her own taste.
Exactly. She's gone from being, I will be here in my space doing as I please, and very muted, very all right, it's different, but we can work with this, to very much not her style, very feminine, um, hyper feminine, hyper um, maximalist, which like none of this is her personality whatsoever. Um,
Hmm.
but in both ways, whoop, pardon me, lost the screen there. But in both outfits, she's outside of the time where she quote unquote should be. So
Hmm.
in the first one, she's a little bit ahead of what most people would have been wearing in 1860s Europe. But in the second one, she's technically behind where she should be because everyone around her is already in Gibson girl phase, and she's wearing this. And it's puzzling, but people think that it's purposeful enough that what this must be artistic expression.
Hmm. Right. So the third outfit is the one that's on the left of the first one, right? So it's the one on
Yes.
the bottom left.
Hand on the hip.
Yes.
Um, yes. So this one was it felt so easy. And I think that's partially because the Gibson girl look was partially focused on women being able to do the things that men could. And so these kinds of designs were being seen, around the First World War, when women had to do all the things that men could do, and suddenly it necessitated changes in how fashion worked. um,
Hmm.
and not everybody was happy about it. Because suddenly women were like, well, wait a second, I can run a factory like a man can, I can run a farm like a man can, all of these other things. Um, so then why can't I have the same rights? So they're they're and fashion and um politics have gone hand in hand in that sense for a very long time. And I do actually want to include a scene um in the book of Khet where Josephine tries bloomers as the Victorians saw them, and is very swiftly told never to touch those again. um but in this third picture, we see Josephine in a much more confident place. Um, these steps forward are being made, and she sees this, and it's almost comforting in a sense, I would say. But I wanted to kind of echo the Victorian outfit without making it too obvious. Again, like keeping um, the structures, the silhouettes, the shapes that we would have seen sewn into the garments of the Gibson girls, but give them um, a flair that Joe would find satisfactory.
Mm-hmm.
So we see her, with a high collar again. We see her with kind of the puffed sleeves around the shoulders again. Yes, those things are very her. The bow around the neck, which is kind of her way of trying to get away with something like a cravat, and that sort of evolves over time as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
faking wearing a bow tie or a necktie. Um, and I think that honestly, she would find less to alter with Gibson girl fashion, and I think it kind of suits her in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. What's the color scheme of this one?
Um, that's a really good question. I think I would see something that wasn't quite as muted as the Victorian garments. I think I this one I could see in um like some deeper goldenrod kind of yellows and appropriate trim. I always think of these kinds of dresses as being just kind of pale generally, but
Mm-hmm.
no, I could see it in a kind of patterned muslin or something maybe.
Mm-hmm. I think that fits.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that could fit.
Yeah. So the last one is the one at the top left, and it looks, I guess, the most modern compared to all of them. So when does she wear this outfit? Is it at the end of the Book of Cats?
So, the first two outfits we'll have seen in the Book of Ket. The third one we talked about would be more towards the first part of the Book of Ka, and then gradually we'll see her transition from Gibson girl to flapper in the
Oh,
Book of
okay.
Ka. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we see her really stepping out now. She's cut her hair off. She's wearing like this dress that's a sweater vest kind of thing. It's very masculine. It's very butch. Um, Probably the only reason she's wearing lipstick is because someone, heckled her into it. Um, and we also see a certain cynicism in her expression that she didn't have in the other three pictures. She's kind of started to find her footing and her place in time, if you will. This outfit was so much fun to draw, and I really had to pull myself in because I let myself do an evening look for that Belle Epoque, the with the feathers and things. And I was like, no, 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 you've got to do a daytime look for the 20s thing because it's fun and it's easy to draw evening wear, but I have to think about what Joe will be seen in most often, and it is not evening wear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I wanted to go with something. What was this inspired by? Oh, I think this outfit called to mind like early Greta Garbo and kind of the tomboy character of silent films, and even for those of us who enjoy Lackadaisy Cats, Ivy's usual attire, the little black cat, she's always kind of dressed like this with these just adorable little sweater knits, and um I think that from that point, and I would love to play around with it because like I said, I want to see kind of a Weimar Republic look on Joe. And I think that towards the end of the Book of Ka and into the Book of Ebe, we'll be seeing her in something that's more like a feminized suit than a dress. Like she'll finally start wearing pants regularly.
It makes sense because you said the Book of Eve takes place in modern times, right?
It does. It does. But the interesting thing there is that Jo herself will not be interacting with the modern world. She will only be observing it for the most part. She will not be able to use a computer, shall we say, or, go to a mall. That's not going to be happening. That's not in the cards for her. Um, but she will see day-to-day life, and what we'll see her in from, where she's observing this modern world. Um, she'll have a very um oh goodness, now that her name is escaping me. The German actress who famously wore a tuxedo in silent films and dressed very Marlene Dietrich kind of look.
I see. And we're probably going to see that next time, right?
Yes, we are going to be seeing some more of that. So with the thumbnail that I sent you that we used on our Instagram, that one didn't as much show the clothes so much as the hairstyles and kind of thing, which is also incredibly indicative of an era. We see her with some very Victorian bun braiding going on, and we see her with a very, the Belle Epoque updo, and we see her with the very iconic Gibson girl look and flapper bob. But towards that middle picture, that is how she'll look at the end of the Book of Ka and going into the Book of Eve. And there is an androgyny that's starting to happen there, and we don't actually see any fabric. There's just a head and neck. So we're kind of left to guess what she'll be wearing when we see her next.
Yes, I'm going to see if I can share that right now. It's a little hard because I didn't put it because what is it called? A restream requires us to upload something to PowerPoint, and I didn't put it in the PowerPoint. So
Gotcha.
I'm gonna find a way to share it. I think I can open it in Discord and share it as a Chrome tab. I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there we
Okay.
are.
There it is. Yeah. So the one in the middle is how Josephine looks at the end of the Book of Ka.
Yes. Yeah. So, like I said, every time she is connecting with one of her pieces, her physical appearance also changes. Um, and one of the changes that she picked up when she finally connected to Laurel is that her hair curled up around her face instead of hanging straight. It gained a curl. So suddenly her hair went from being bobbed and kind of straight to being quite short and very tously, and it looks very boyish.
Right. That makes sense. So yes, what's the next change that's gonna happen besides clothes? Is that a spoiler?
The next change. Um So one of the next changes will definitely be some may have noticed that Josephine is never wearing earrings. But there is a plot point in the Book of Eve that requires her to pierce her ears, and it's really kind of a touching moment. But I think the next one after that is, oh, that might be a little bit spoilery. I'll have to think about that. Um 'Cause the next change after that, I think, would be in the book of, Shoot, when she connects to her shadow, and that is gonna leave a very interesting change, that is both physical and, um, like, it's not just something visible that you can see a physical change, but it does something. It has a certain quality that is beyond just appearance and aesthetic.
I see. That's pretty far in because we still haven't talked about the Book of Eve yet.
We haven't, and, I have been trying to work on that one a lot. It's getting better, and I actually have some little drawings of uh Annie, the character that we're going to meet in the Book of Ebe. Um so I'll be sending those along soon. And I think that one is going to be that one's going to be interesting to look at. I think we had talked about doing some workshopping with the characters, and I think I would really like to try workshopping Annie with you
Oh,
on
that
one
would
of
be
our
great.
yeah, on
Yeah.
one of our future podcasts. That would be awesome.
Yeah, we haven't really done workshops before. So like I think I mean with anyone actually. So this would
Oh,
be,
really?
our first time. Yeah, basically. Well, I mean not recorded. So this will be our first recorded workshop. So I guess I'll just ask any questions that come to my mind as you explain Annie.
Okay. We might talk to Tete about that because she's done so many of those like character boot camps and things like that. She would probably be a really great person to ask, as far as like what would be good questions to help us like figure out who this person is and what her effect on the story is.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We'll definitely see if Tete can join.
That would be wonderful. It's been
All
too
right.
long.
I know, and I recently met her in real life too.
Oh, yes, I've been seeing that too, from your trip. Oh, the pictures just look wonderful, and it's just so exciting. I'm
It
hoping to
is, yeah.
to plan a
We
trip with her
still can't
myself.
believe that it happened, but it finally
Oh,
did, yeah.
yeah. I'm hoping to plan a trip myself and finally meet her in person. I think we've known each other for, gosh, more than 10 years.
Hmm.
So it needs to happen sometime.
I know you guys you need to really meet up. That would be great. All right, thank you so much for this amazing podcast.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.
Yep, see you next time.